Good morning, councillors, and good morning to members of our team here in the council chambers, and good morning to members of the community viewing in on live stream and members of the gallery as well. As is customary, councillors, I take this opportunity to respectfully acknowledge the Darumbal people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and also all Indigenous cultures within Livingstone, because they are what define us. We have a full attendance this morning, councillors. We have our appropriate officers. There are no leave of absences or apologies. Are there any declarations of interest in matters on the agenda today? No? Good stuff. There is no business arising or outstanding from previous meetings, as this is a special. No presentations of petitions, no councillor or delegate reports, no questions, statements, motions on notice from councillors, and nothing from the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee. So we'll jump straight into the reports, councillors, and the first one is 10.1, Central Queensland Defence Attraction Strategy. I'll speak to this one, councillors, and I think what I'll do is I'll move this and ask for a seconded. Thank you, Councillor Hutton. And I'll just speak to it briefly, councillors. As I made you aware last week, CQ Rock previously commissioned work on a CQ Rock defence strategy that focused on the economic benefits of a heightened military presence in central Queensland. Further to this, and somewhat symbiotically, the Prime Minister announced recently a comprehensive review of the ADF, the Australian Defence Force, to make recommendations about the structure, posture and preparedness, as he called it, of the Australian Defence Force for the foreseeable future. Early last week I spoke to the contacts that we have within the ADF about this Prime Ministerial announcement and this new review. And the advice that I received was that we are well positioned, but certainly the work that we've done to this point with the CQ Rock strategy focuses on the economic benefits to the region from a heightened military presence, but doesn't necessarily convince the military as to why they should come here. So from a strategic point of view, his suggestion was that we amend the document and do some further work on it to provide a heightened defence focus in the work. So the report needs some work to put a much higher military slant on it. So in other words, to convince the ADF why they should relocate some of their facilities to central Queensland. Now, I've spoken to members of the CQ Rock, specifically Mayor Williams from Rockhampton Regional Council, Mayor Burnett from Gladstone Regional Council. We three, as well as, I beg your pardon, RDA, Regional Development Australia, we three councils within CQ Rock are the ones that stand to gain most benefit, I guess, from a CQ a defence presence. And CQ Rock's position is that any further expenditure on, our collective view within the three mayors is that we wouldn't necessarily ask CQ Rock to put any further funding in. The three councils that would benefit most are most appropriately the ones to provide more funding. So I believe that Mayor Williams has already got funding within the current Rockhampton Regional Council budget. Mayor Burnett is talking to his councillors today, as I understand it, to garner some more funding, and I'm talking to you today with a similar outlook. So councillors, I believe if we're going to be in this, if we are going to be serious about trying to attract a heightened military presence into this region, and that's looking at it collectively from Rockhampton Regional Council's point of view, potentially with the airport and land tenures they have, with us from Shoalwater Bay and from Gladstone in terms of their port facilities and those sorts of things. There are enormous opportunities for us to take advantage potentially of the review that the Prime Minister has announced, and also the possibility of having some of those facilities relocated. Now, as we know, when the Army deploys out of Enoggera Base for exercises in Shoalwater Bay, it costs approximately $6 million every time they do that. That's a huge amount of money, and clearly money they could potentially save by, having facilities here within the CQ region, much closer to Shoalwater Bay. So those are the arguments we're promulgating, and that's not only an economic argument from our point of view, but it's a common sense financial argument for the military. So, councillors, I commend the report to the table, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Friend.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first question is, are the other participating councils contributing an equal share of $40,000, or is it to population, proportion to population?
The amounts differ. I believe Mayor Burnett is chasing approximately 60,000. Rockhampton is contributing 40, and as I said, I'm asking up to 40, and then RDA will contribute 30,000.
Thank you. And my second question is in relation to redirecting the budget from consultancies intended to advance property development work for Homemaker 2 and for the relocation of Cordingley Street Depot. When we redirect those funds, will that just put us behind 12 months, or is there a time frame that may impact those future projects?
I might defer to the CEO on that one.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor Friend. In the short time we had to identify where we might redirect funds from, this was the logical location. We don't have a complete understanding of what that will do in terms of the scope of works we can continue on those projects. It was a large budget, a couple of $100,000, so we're harvesting some of that to achieve this outcome. So we'll still advance some work, but given that this only came up last Wednesday or Thursday, we haven't really thought that through, but it was the most logical nomination of something that we could offer up.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. Councillor Mather.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was similar to Councillor Friend, because if we're deferring funding that we've already allocated and thought carefully about allocating that funding, and it was to make money. So we're putting an opportunity to make money aside on a chance that we might make long-term money on another front. Do we have any indication as to what the Defence Force is looking for? Because if you say that we haven't convinced them that they should stay here, I'm sure their mind's made up. I don't like to think that we're going to put money in, defer funding, and then find that that money is not going to any good use when they know what they want. I don't want to see us, shall I use the word, waste our money, and it's not wasting if we're going to invest it, but we need to put it in the position where we can best utilise it. So my thought is, do we know what they want? Has anybody asked them that?
Well, the review has just been announced by the Prime Minister, and that was in early August, Councillor Mather. So the review itself hasn't kicked off properly yet. I would imagine that in Canberra at the moment, the machinations around that are being formed. The view of CQ Rock to this point in developing that economic strategy is to be considered, you have to have something in the way of a proposal. Without one, you won't be considered at all. So that sort of logic flows on to this recommendation from this report as well, because if we're going to be considered as part of this, it's all very well to explain to them what the economic benefits are, but we also have to explain to Defence what the military benefits are. And so in terms of whether they've actually articulated what they want, no, they haven't, because I don't think they've actually turned their mind to it yet. But we have until the end of October to submit this, so the time frame is very, very short. And so clearly, once they've received their submissions, they'll probably then turn their mind to, if they don't already prior to that, what it is they're looking for.
Yeah, it's a big gamble when you don't know what your target is. We can just tell them our attributes, but we don't know what benefits they're looking for to start with. We've got the land, we've got the resources here, we've got the proximity to the ocean, we've got a whole bunch of things. But if we knew what they specifically were looking for, we'd have a better idea. I don't know whether we can make a further submission down the track to get that information. That would help.
Well, we don't have the time, Councillor Mather, because this submission has to be completed by October.
Have we ever asked them what they're looking for?
Well, we've been told, Councillor, the conversation I had with this particular contact within ADF was in confidence, and so ultimately no names will be mentioned, but certainly the advice was we need to get this in by October to be considered, because this review is probably one of the most significant reviews that the Australian Defence Force will have going forward and probably has had for some time. And so you're either in it or you're not.
Well, they've invested so much money in this area this far, in the Shoalwater Bay area, land-wise, access-wise. I guess we've got to be in it to take the chance. But we have to be mindful that we are putting off one opportunity for funding or for income to have perhaps a greater benefit with the smaller investment.
Indeed. I mean, I don't imagine, and I might include myself in this, councillor, that anyone around the table is happy about taking money from an already established budget to fund this. I'm certainly not, but again, it's a matter of weighing up the opportunity here.
I guess that we do it all the time on a smaller scale, don't we? Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions, councillors? All right, anyone? Okay. Councillor Hutton, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have to say I was incredibly excited when your email came through suggesting that there was an opportunity for us to engage with this Australian Government initiative and then provide further advice. So we know from the report that CQ Rock produced last year that growing the Central Queensland economy through defence industries could add an additional $4.5 billion to the gross regional product. We know that it's predicted that if we were to be lucky enough to be home to even a segment of a regiment, that we potentially have a growing impact of up to 36,618 people living in Central Queensland. We know that defence industries could add an extra 21,886 jobs, including some 8,973 directly related to the military itself. So there are great opportunities here, and maybe it's all of them, maybe it's none of them that ultimately that CQ together is able to achieve. But I think it says three things to us. Number one, we produced this document with a very strong economic focus because we're recognising that that's when we were talking to the former Prime Minister and the former Deputy Prime Minister. That's the words that they were looking for was about how did it benefit your region. And in some ways it was about bringing defence along for the ride to a domestic agenda. It's obvious from the conversations that the current Prime Minister has provided and the commentary he's provided into the media that he's very strongly asking people to reframe their thinking around defence to the future direction around, well, what's the best posture for the strategic initiatives of the Defence Force and the defence of our nation? So we do need to reframe our document to make sure that while we sell the great economic benefits that we see that it provides to our local economy, but also the region, that we also provide that discussion around, well, what's good for defence? And as the Mayor said, we do speak about it in the previous document, but we focused on the benefits to us in terms of the economy. Now we need to make sure that we sell them on, well, what are the benefits to them? When we look at it, it is a great opportunity for us to advocate at that federal government level, but just as importantly, and the part that probably makes, me most proud is that this is a sign that we've got Rockhampton, Livingstone and Gladstone working collaboratively together on this project, as has the Greater CQ Rock along with the Regional Development Association. It's got to be good for Livingstone's good for Rocky. What's good for Rocky is good for Gladstone. We know what's good for CQ is good for Australia. So I'm really keen on us advancing this and taking this step, and I commend it to the table and commend the Mayor for taking such fast action for us to get this underway so that we can make sure that we're playing our role in providing opportunity for the future of Central Queensland.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton. Is anyone speaking against? Would anyone else like to speak for? Councillor Eastwood.
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, look, I will support this. My only concern, I guess, is that we don't become the small brother to the other the other regions, or Rockhampton and Gladstone particularly. We need to make sure that we do get the benefits, especially the economical benefits and the tourism benefits. And but yeah, apart from that, I will support it, and we will make sure that we push along those lines when the time comes.
Thank you, Councillor Eastwood. Councillor Friend.
I was just going to concur with Councillor Eastwood, however, also say that this is an amazing opportunity. It's been many, many decades since the federal government has undertaken such a investigation or a consultation into the ADF, and many decades ago the Townsville City Council actually had the ADF located in Townsville. It's brought so much economic growth, development, and this is what we want to see in our community. So I definitely support this.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. Anyone else like to speak before I close and go to vote? Councillor Bello.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Too often councils are criticised for being bureaucratic and having red tape and being slow to be able to respond. And I think encouraging this is an example where we're prepared to show that we are going to be agile and nimble in responding to an opportunity. And it would be a damn shame if we sat on our hands and said, oh, well, we're just not sure and, maybe we better not. Look, it is an investment, but it's one I think that it's worth. If you don't have a go, you'll never know. Ultimately, you just will not know. So in counting that cost of investing $40,000 away from the homemaker to this strategy, I believe I'm prepared to support. I think the merits are sound. I don't know how Defence makes their decision, but if we don't provide them with the best information we can, well, how do we expect to even remotely influence that decision? And just endorsing Councillor Hutton's comments, the ability to collaborate with Rockhampton and Gladstone is a good opportunity. I think it's the way forward for us, all three councils, to work together, and the balance of the CQ Rock. So I'm certainly prepared to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bello. All right, councillors, just in concluding, thank you for those comments, all of you. The overarching principle I've been working towards for some time now is that if individual councils think they're going to be able to go it alone and operate in silos independently from their neighbours, they are doomed. And I think we need to work collaboratively with our neighbours, and certainly that's why I've been particularly excited about the efforts and the passion within CQ Rock in this term of our council. And I think this is another example of how we should collaboratively work together, as Councillor Bello and Councillor Hutton have articulated. All right, councillors, we'll close debate and go to the vote on this one. So mover myself, seconded Councillor Hutton. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. 10.2, councillors, is the station invitation to tender. Welcome to the table, Sonia. Mr. CEO, Sonia is talking to this one.
Good morning, councillors, and Carol, thank you. As councillors are aware, in July we went to an expression of interest process to find out if there was market interest in activating the station site, the council-owned station site, either in regards to a tenancy in the station building or other uses on the block. We received 3 submissions, which councillors have been briefed on. 2 of those were more for sort of, entertainment style uses. And then the third one was one that involved high density residential with mixed use below on the eastern side of the precinct, about basically the eastern half. Part of that expression of interest needed really to include a purchase option for that development to go ahead. As you would be aware, most finances require a developer to own their land before they would lend money to a development of that scale. Because the expression of interest at that time was more about leasehold and didn't actually have purchase options in there, we really, if we're going to move forward with that, we need to go back out to public expressions of interest through an invitation to tender, so that other interested people have that same opportunity if they wanted to do that type of development and potentially purchase the eastern part of the site. So as we're all aware, we're currently in a housing crisis, and that was one of the reasons why it was put to council to think if they would like to see high density, affordable, hopefully, residential development happen on the eastern half of that site to, one, activate it, get more people into our town centre, supporting our local businesses, correspond with the development and the investment that Bay Plaza is putting in with their cinemas and things like that, proximity to public transport, it does lend itself to that type of use. So by going through this invitation to tender, we also want to, I guess, sequester the western end of the site for community purposes and to get tenancy and activation around that station building as well, parks, open spaces, hopefully a recreation style market precinct that can be activated. Whether or not the private sector responds to that or not, or whether we get proposals again for high density residential development on the eastern portion of the site is really, again, a test of the market. So this invitation to tender, I guess, has that vision in there, and it's about seeing what responses we get to that. And I'm asking council today if they would endorse the intent and that's expressed in that invitation to tender, and for us to go to the market in response to that.
Thank you, Sonia. Any questions of Sonia? Councillor Friend.
Thank you. Thanks, Sonia, for that information. What would be the negative impacts of leasehold?
The negative
The
impact
negative impacts to council?
of leasing the entire site?
Yes.
I don't think that, I'm not saying there would be negative impacts to council. When we went to the expression of interest, we didn't actually have any interest in leasehold, as in regards to high density residential on the eastern part of the site. Leasehold in the station building or around, I believe could be possible, but it depends on what the ultimate objective is for council. If they just want that that area around the station to be more of just public open space, which I think personally would be a bit of a waste. I know we've got Beerman Park and other areas in the foreshore, then we could look at options like that. But I think, ultimately we want to help and address what I believe our community needs. It would be fantastic to actually get some more density into our town centres, particularly, and particularly if we can get something like affordable housing into that area, it would be fantastic.
Councillor Mather.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was so listening to what you're saying, I forgot what I was going to say.
That's okay.
We'll come back to you, Councillor Mather.
Yeah, yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor, because a few things running through my mind at the moment.
Okay. Any other questions?
Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor East, it's all right. I don't see a light on.
So when this was presented to us the first time, I just wondered why it wasn't presented to us like this with
The first time. The intent in the first expression of interest basically had the same principles. We asked if people wanted to activate the station building, we did express the potential uses could be high density residential. The only change really to this now is, would council consider a purchase option on the eastern half of the site? And also the fact that going back out to invitation to public tender and going through one of our real estate agents, like off our preferred panel, probably gives us a wider market as well. That's the one thing that we didn't do the first time. We undertook the expression of interest ourselves. So we obviously advertised it as much as we could, but probably going through a real estate might open more interest and more responses. We may not get any, but hopefully we will.
Yeah.
Councillor
Thanks,
Mather.
Mr. Mayor. You've triggered my mind again. Advertising, how wide did we advertise for this one? Because this is a prime piece of real estate.
Yeah, for the expression of interest, council undertook that process ourselves. So obviously we advertised it through council's Facebook, LinkedIn.
Basically locally.
Locally, yes, and whoever is, obviously seeing our channels. We did notify our real estate agents of the opportunity, but we managed the process ourselves. So they could have referred people and said, council has, an expression of interest out at the moment. So if you want to respond, you can. And I did speak to a couple of real estate agents at the time, did contact myself. But this will probably will hopefully and definitely give it a bit more of a broader range.
That's what I was thinking too, because if we're advertising within a certain radius, to occupy or acquire, whether it be for the lease or freehold, a prime piece of real estate in the centre of town, so to speak, we need to go as wide as we can to make sure that we do our assets a favour. You know, we just don't let it go to somebody because it suits our purpose. We've got to make sure it's the best purpose for that site.
I agree, Council. And all responses, I mean, Council will ultimately decide whether or not they accept the proposals to the tender. This is really, again, a bit of a fishing for the market to see what private investment we can leverage off our site, and more than anything, get a great outcome for the community.
Yeah. And those expressions that we've had so far, they would still be there, I'd imagine, probably waiting to see what our responses
so
were.
I personally talked to the 3 submitters and told them that this is the process that we.
How did they
would
feel
need
about
to.
that?
They're all good.
Yeah. Now what I'm thinking of, if they sort of back out, thinking we can't compete, obviously they know it's a better use. There is a better use there.
Yes, and 2 of the uses were more probably looking for a larger developer to come in and then probably collaborate with a larger developer rather than, we didn't actually get anyone that actually wanted to occupy the station building itself. More they were looking at as an ancillary use to a market style, Eat Street style development. That was 2 of them out of the 3.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, councillors, can I, question?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair.
I was just going to go to moving and seconding, but that's fine. Yep.
Yeah, just so I'm clear, the only change in this, I guess, from previous is that we're identifying that there is freehold, the ability to purchase freehold land there. But it still will be council's determination as, A, whether they accept any of the submissions that come in, whether they fit with council's desire to, for the way that we believe would be developed to reflect the community's attitudes. That's still totally in council's domain and authorisation to determine going forward. Irrespective of what comes back from this process, council will then be presented as we were previously. This is what's come back. Now, councillors, what do you think of that?
Yes, Councillor.
Very good. Happy to second that, Mr. Chair, if you were going to move it. Or
No, I think Councillor Hutton was going to move it.
I have another question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through
Okay,
you.
so can I just get that
Yes.
moving and seconded recorded first, councillor? So Councillor Hutton, seconded Councillor Bello. Councillor Friend, question?
Yes, so going back to the market, would that actually impede the ones that have already submitted? Would they then say, well, you're not interested in us, and they would withdraw their interest?
I don't believe so. As I said, I've spoken to all of them. 2 of them would benefit from a larger, I guess, someone coming in and developing it more in line with council's vision, because they didn't want to occupy the building. They more just wanted to be ancillary uses. The 3rd proponent, I believe, will definitely still be interested, because it was their desire to be able to purchase half of the land to enact that development. So if council is then going back out to the market and enabling that potentially to happen as an option, I'm quite sure they will submit, but obviously I can't speak for them.
No. Question, Councillor Watson.
Mr. Smith, oh God,
Sonia.
Sonia, sorry.
It's okay, Councillor Watson.
I just have a concern that if we go back to the market, is there a possibility that the person that might get the land will just sit on it for years to years? Have we got some sort of clause in it that says they have to do something instead of us just sitting on it?
There are clauses and there are things that council can do to enact that, to ensure that that site is activated and not land banked, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hutton, would you like to speak to the report?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor, and I thank the officer and the team for the work that they've done in this space. I think one of the exciting parts of an expression of interest process is that it invites the community, both the business development and the rest of the residents and ratepayers of Livingstone, to actually consider, well, what do they want to see there? What could it be? And by using the expression of interest process, it means that sometimes you actually find ideas that were not necessarily on the horizon or the first thought of any individual or the collective at the start. The way I look at an expression of interest process has a level of transparency that allows us to see what's in the marketplace without making a commitment, but also provides a level of transparency to the community. We've had from that process an innovative idea that could take place on that space. However, it requires something that we never originally put forward, which was freeholding of land, which if anyone is looking to develop, obviously that provides them some certainty, as well as any investor or bank that they may use gives them some guarantees there as well. So it is only right that council, instead of using a closed process of the previous expression of interest parties, actually goes out to a public process. So again, that there's the transparency for the community. There is the opportunity for others who previously may have gone, oh, well, I'm not interested in leasehold and you're not looking at doing freehold. They've now got the opportunity to revisit and see that that change is there. But it also means that from our council's perspective, that we've put the governance in check to make sure that we've been honest and open with the community, we've provided opportunity, but we're also really not hindering the potential of what is one of the last and probably the greatest sites that we have in the Yeppoon CBD that's currently, for all intensive purposes, reverting back to almost greenfield, although it's probably more of a brownfield site considering its previous use. I'm excited at the opportunity. I am very pleased with the terms that are set out as part of the conditions and look forward to council yet again having the opportunity on behalf of the community, when these public tenders are returned, to consider and make for its own mind a decision as to what the future of that site is. But as the Deputy Mayor said with the previous item, that if you never go, you never know. This is our chance to actually put it out there, see what's there, and hopefully take something that will make the heart of Yeppoon even stronger.
Indeed, well articulated, Councillor Hutton. Is anyone speaking against? Councillor Friend.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Although I do agree with Councillor Hutton, I have reservations. My reservations are the people who previously, or the organisation that previously placed an expression of interest, had a well thought out plan, and as Sonia has just previously said, that she cannot think of any negative impacts of leasehold. So at this time, moving forward, the federal government gave us the money for a community recovery hub, and the organisation that has previously made that submission had the capability to help the community in times of disaster, in times of need, and also make the space into a welcoming community area as well. I thought their plan was well thought out. I thought the presentation was absolutely exciting, that we were moving on with this, although I do understand the opening up for further expressions of interest will give the community a wider range. I'm all for transparency, absolutely, but I just have my reservations that sometimes, you know, a bird in the hand can be worth two in the bush. And so today, and for that reason, and to play devil's advocate, I am going to vote against this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Friend. Would anyone else like to speak in support? Councillor Bella?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think importantly, this potentially may actually keep one of those birds in the bush even thicker and deeper than what they were previously. Quite possibly so because of the ability to freehold that's in the now in the terms and conditions of what we're about to do. So I don't see the negative so much connotations of that, but actually the positives that can come from it. As I've said once or twice here before, never be so sure of what you want unless you miss out on something better. This process allows to test, is there anything better? That's what it's doing. So I'm prepared to support it on those grounds. It's an exciting time for Livingstone Shire and development within our region, and this council is trying to deliver the best development possible that it can, because you only get to do it once. That's it. So we want to get it as right as we possibly can. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bello. Anyone else speaking against? Councillor May, your light's on?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I was going to speak for it.
Okay, all right, the floor is yours.
Yeah, just very, very briefly. Given the minimal interest that we've had by expression so far, and the potential value of the site. I don't think anybody would disagree with Councillor Friend. What we want to do is to maximise the interest that we could have out there, because we want to, the public deserves for us to go after the potential, the best potential for that site, being probably the last one we have to be able to explore. So I agree with Councillor Friend. I believe we did have an application, well, not an application, we did have an expression that was exciting, that served our needs, but I'm thinking perhaps that excitement could be expanded. And until such time as we try it, we will never know, and which goes to Councillor Bello. So we might end up with your excitement, but I think in the end of it, we will be satisfied that we've done the right thing overall. I have no doubt about that.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eastwood.
Yeah, I'll speak for it, Mr Mayor, and I think with any asset like this, that we need to make sure that we do the right thing. And if I was a developer going to put millions upon millions of dollars into a location, I would, I think, prefer it to be freehold, to be owned by the company or entity, rather than to be a leasehold arrangement. And I think that by going down this track, we're more likely to lock that bird in the bush. I might be wrong, but at least we'll know. So, Mr Mayor, I'm just very happy to support this one.
Thank you. And I refuse to make any further references to birds in the bush. If I can just maybe address one of Councillor Friend's concerns, and I'm in no way trying to influence her vote, but she did raise the issue of the federal funding that was allocated for the site for disaster recovery. Certainly, as we know, Councillor, from the proposed plan, there are two portions, or can be two portions on that site. The portion from the railway station down to the Sail Inn Hotel, or motel, I beg your pardon, and then the rest of it. In terms of disaster recovery, community facilities, open space, whatever, the portion from the railway station to the west will still be available for community use, open space, what have you. I think the fact that the other portion down towards the Sail Inn Motel is available potentially for commercial, for social housing, community housing, whatever, is an exciting prospect. And as Councillor Hutton has clearly articulated, what we've been looking to do till now is to activate that part of town, because we are actually looking for an opportunity to bring additional business, additional activity, additional people into the CBD. Because when you do that as a community, you take cars off the roads, you do all those sorts of things because people are actually living in the CBD. So the fact that there is federal funding being awarded for disaster recovery on that site, I don't think is prohibited necessarily by either freeholding the land or having those types of activities existing in synergy with the open space. All right, we're happy to, Councillor Watson.
Oh, my turn. Look, I was actually reading The Australian a couple of weekends ago, and they were talking about main streets of regional towns and how they're going to struggle in the next 30 years. And this opportunity that we had in front of us is something that brings people to the area, to the town. As the Mayor said, less vehicles on the road, things like that. And this is why I believe we need to bring more population closer to the town, which also means that we already have the facilities, the sewage, the water, the power, all those things, which makes it cheaper for council overall in setting up trunk infrastructure. So this is something I think we really need to do this, and I really would like it that we did get more housing in the main street.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. All right, councillors, Councillor Hutton, did you want to wrap up? No. Okay. All right, so we've got a mover in Councillor Hutton, seconded Councillor Bello. We'll go to the vote. Councillors, all in favour? Those against? Motion is carried, 6-1. Thank you. All right, well, we've come to the point where we need to close the meeting to discuss a confidential item. So, members of the gallery, thank you for your attendance. And we wish you a good day. All right. So can move and a second to go into confidential. Move Councillor Mather, seconded Councillor Friend. All in favour. Motion is carried. All right, so welcome back, members of the community viewing it on live stream. Councillors, this is the officer's recommendation in relation to 13.1. I've got a mover in Councillor Friend. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Eastwood, thank you. Councillor Friend, did you wish to speak to the report briefly?
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, considering it has come out of confidential, we've just come out of confidential. At this time, we sit at this table as elected members. We are not engineers. We rely on quality staff to be able to give us the advice and to educate us and make us understand how the whole process works. And I just say that I fully believe in and trust Mr Nigel Deacon, who's the Manager of Water and Waste, and Mr Michael Creederman, who's the Director of Infrastructure. And with their guidance, I think that we're on the right track to be able to upgrade the Emu Park sewage treatment plant and to keep it running for quite a few years to come. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. Is anyone speaking against the recommendation? Would anyone else like to speak for it? Councillor Eastwood?
Mr Mayor, just pretty much on the same vein as Councillor Friend, that the officers have recommended it. They put forward a good argument, and the procurement process and recommendation report recommends it. So how can I go against it?
Thank you, Councillor Eastwood. And can I also commend the officers for the work they've done on this one, Nigel and Michael. I know there's a heck of a lot of work gone into this, and I do appreciate it, as do the other councillors, I'm sure. So thank you so much for that work, and I think the recommendation is very solid. All right, councillors, you've got a mover and Councillor Friend, seconded Councillor Eastwood, all in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. And thank you to the officers, Mr CEO. And as that concludes the items on the agenda for this meeting, councillors, thank you for your attendance, and wish you a good morning, and wish you a good morning to the members of our community on live stream.